What's up? Back again, this time with a video inspired by none other than our famous trad thought, our formerly favored trad thought, Lauren Southern. She posted today on YouTube, or was it a couple days ago? It was actually almost a week ago. Well, the algorithm just showed it to me, so it's a video titled, "Can you still oppose mandates while complying?" The short and simple answer is no, you can't. If you get the vaccine, you complied with the mandates, you know, that's about it. I mean, I guess you can claim that you oppose the mandate, but who gives a fuck? Actions speak louder than words. Like, yeah, you know, I oppose rounding up Jews, but I helped them do it anyway out of some 4D calculating maneuver that Lauren tries to, conflate with complying with YouTube's community standards at some length into the video. So it's just, you know, the stupid shit, the mental gymnastics people go through to try and avoid admitting to themselves that they are screw-ups, cowards, failed to plan, whatever. It's kind of staggering. Like, I'm sorry, if you take the vaccine, you have no ground to stand on as far as opposing mandates go, because look at what you did. And the problem is that every single person that just complies, you know, for their fucking shekels or their pence, makes it much more difficult for people like me who will not take the vaccine fucking ever. I've already had COVID. Why the fuck would I get a vaccine that doesn't even work as well as natural immunity? I mean, we could go on at length and I'll touch on a couple of those things here, but it's just like, no, you don't. Now, if you're a trad thought, it's easy to come on and just make these fucking videos where you play the middle of the field so that, you know, like she says, you can maintain your channel and push the Overton window. It's like, you know, you've got 665K subs. What are you fucking doing? They're letting you have your channel. You clearly can't be that. There's a whole bunch of weird shit that went on with Lauren Southern after the whole everything that went crazy. Not going to bother touching on it here. We're just going to talk about vaccine mandates. So the first point that they, if I get my fucking screen to turn on here, that she goes on about is what it all started with, which is one of Tim Pool's tweets. So he said, "No one who claims to oppose vaccine mandates, who then went and got vaccinated due to fear of losing a job or money, actually opposes mandates," which I think is true. It's harsh, which is why people balk at it, but it's true. You know, you don't actually oppose the mandate. What you oppose is what I argue is a form of self-inflicted poverty. You know, I geared my entire financial life around the fact that the government is nuts, the government is huge, the government does all sorts of wackadoodle bullshit that, yeah, you know, it's very difficult if you're 35 years old, or I guess at any point in time, to just go from working for other men and not being supported by your own sort of ventures to then doing it on your own. But for me, in my mind, what would have made me feel sick to my stomach every fucking day would be to forcibly participate in a medical experiment. That actually happened to me when I was a janitor 10 fucking years ago. They're like, yeah, you're getting the flu vaccine or you lose your job. So I got the flu vaccine, and then what do you know? Now I got a bunch of allergies to stupid shit. So it was never a problem before than it was after flu vaccine. So after that, I was like, you know, and I never imagined in my wildest dreams we'd have some shit like COVID happen. I mean, you can't pick it out specifically, but after that, I was kind of like, you know, maybe I need to take a different strategy into account here and plan going forward accordingly so that I don't have to be in this position, right? So it's like, at the end of the day, if you don't have the chips to take your stand, that's your fucking fault. Who chose to go to college, who chose to go to normal route, and that's all fine. Like, you could still do that and still be able to take a stand, but it's like, whose fault is it that you didn't have 6 months of savings or a year's worth of savings or 2 or more? That's your fault for making shit choices. You know, whose fault is it that you're in debt and now have to work like a debt slave to make these interest payments to international banksters? That's your fucking fault. So it's like, when you screw up and now you're in a position where, oops, I guess I got to participate in a goddamn medical experiment so I can continue making my debt payments. You don't also get to be in that position and then make a stand like, oh yeah, I oppose vaccine mandates. It's like, no, you really don't, because if you oppose mandates of any sort, you could have read a history book and went, wow, you know, there's a lot of things that I have to do in order to make sure that I'm not in a position where I have to engage in this sort of obnoxious and insane behavior. Now, if you want to take the vaccine, which by the way isn't even a vaccine, it's not a sterilizing vaccine, it's an experimental, there's a whole nother video I got to make about that because there's some really hinky shit going on, but it's like, if you want to take it, that's fine. But nobody should be forced to really put anything in their body that they don't want to, you know, which is why you look at existing standing US law. They already regulate the shit out of what you can and cannot put into it, more what you're not allowed to put into it than what you have to put into it, I would say. But it's equally kind of crazy, you know. If it's a sterilizing vaccination that's tried and true, then sure, let's go down that route, but that's not what this is. And to add insult to injury to this whole ridiculous shit show is that if you are the majority of people, there's like a 1% chance that you're going to have a problem with coronavirus anyway, that you're going to die from it, you might be hospitalized, whatever. It's like, dude, it really, I think conflating it with the flu is even a little far out there, because I had the flu. Guess what? I had COVID too. Caught the shit on purpose. It was nothing compared to the flu, and I had a fairly high viral load to begin with. So I don't know, all that exercising, I guess there's a benefit to doing that. It's a fact that's lost on half of Americans, most of which probably took the fucking jab anyway. Some other Twitter person, Bridget Fedesi, replied. She's like, you and I are in positions that afford us to speak freely in ways not everybody else is in. Side note, it's their fault that they're in those positions for the most part. It's our job to speak for these people, not talk down to people who aren't in the same position. Choosing between food and ideology isn't hard when it comes down to it. It's not a choice. Well, actually, it is a choice. I don't know who the hell is in a position where it's food or the vaccine. I guess a majority of Americans who are horrible financial planners. Again, that's a choice of their own. So it's like you don't get to make shit choice after shit choice after shit choice and then be in a position where now you have to participate in a medical experiment and also get to claim that you don't support forcing participation of that medical experiment on other people. In fact, you're part of the problem. Every single person, like I just said, who participates in this giant shit show makes it that much harder for those of us who don't want to, because our numbers dwindle. Thankfully in the US, not as much as some other countries, but it's like, you know, you add all the kooky shit that went on with COVID to begin with to now everything that's going on with the vaccines. It's like you got to be some kind of retard, coward, I don't know what, to buy into this and to support people like this. And you can see it just in the comments of the video. I scrolled down a little bit and, you know, we're catching on to the grift, Lauren. That's all I have to say about that. So I took some notes about Bridget's tweet. It is a choice. You know, their choice led them to where they are now, unable to ostensibly at least choose to pay between a paycheck and a medical experiment. Again, that's your fault. And you can go the traditional route and be an employee. It's just don't mismanage your money to the point where you have no backup. You know, it's a lot of people in the US, I guess in the West especially, like to live above their means. It's like, you know, if you were to have got, like, let's say a $65,000 a year job and you went and just bought a house that works for 150 grand and you had months and months of savings on hand, you know, it would be kind of tough to say you're in a position where it's between, oh, I need to eat or I need to take this vaccine. Instead, what do most people do? They make $65,000 a year. They go finance a $300,000 house. They go finance a $25,000 car. They carry $15,000 in credit card debt. So is it really the mandate, or, you know what I'm saying? You kind of get that. It's like, really just stop being a fuck up. Don't buy stupid shit. Don't do stupid shit. Now I know I'm not perfect. Nobody is, but it's like, wow, dude, make some better fucking choices. And then just to nitpick what she said a little bit, a YouTuber's job is whatever they make it to be. I don't come on here and pretend like it's my fucking job to speak for all 241 of my subscribers. That would be retarded. I just come on here and say whatever I want. And if people like it, that's great. I keep doing it. If they don't, well, it's not my fucking job. I don't make money doing this. Come on. So, yeah, to close off on that particular thing, it's like it is a choice, and everyone who chooses a literal, relatively speaking, a pittance of silver over bodily autonomy, like I've said again and again, makes it that much harder for people to whine and complain about being forced to take it, because it's like, you know what, why didn't you save up some of those fucking shekels and sock them away somewhere if they're so goddamn important to everything, if they're the centerpiece of your life? Why don't you treat them a little bit more respectfully instead of frittering them away on stupidities of all and every variety, you know? So Tim Pool then replied to that tweet. He said, "I'm only where I am because I quit jobs, refused to back down. It's amazing that people just assume I'm some rich kid who grew up with every privilege. This is why the elites have no rules and the poor do. Y'all just keep telling to obey." I don't know what he meant by the last of that. Clearly getting annoyed, I think, as I would be too, because, you know, there's a variety of places where it comes from, and, you know, you don't have to be a multimillionaire like Tim Pool to enjoy the same kind of benefits of not having to take an experimental vaccine, you know, if you don't want to. But yeah, he's in that position, and people like myself, obviously to a much lesser degree, are in that position because we don't just back down. We don't just comply. And I know from my days as a fucking weenie, you know, complying feels good. You do what everybody else does. The person who's got control over you rewards you with nice words and privileges and stuff. You know, it feels great. It's easy, you know, just like the devil would want, right? Come on, you see where Satan plays into the whole from the Christian theology here. So it's just amazing to me because it's so far off in people's minds that you can be in a position even as just a lower level 1099er all the way up to how Tim Pool is, that you need some sort of privilege and there's some sort of hack. The main hack is just not being a fucking pussy and not being a lazy motherfucker. That's really the main hack. But you see, most people would rather subject themselves to authoritarianism, participate in medical experiments, do all sorts of shit, not leave their house for a year, you know, just to comply and maintain, you know, it's fucking pathetic. So when you look at, you know, recent historical atrocities, especially like World War II and rounding up Jews, I guess, you know, look no further than people like Lauren Southern to justify compliance with the Gestapo and the Nazi regime, because you have to be smart. And like Schindler, she literally cites Schindler, I guess from the movie Schindler's List. I don't know what the fuck he did, probably something involving helping out Jews, but it's like, she's like, yeah, this guy was cunning and that's what you should do. It's like, okay, so why the fuck aren't you talking about getting a fake vaccine card? That's no mention, no, be smart. Okay, I guess that's kind of smart. I'm not gonna do that. I already had COVID. I'm not gonna get a fucking fake vaccine card. Fuck that. But it's like, if you want to be smart and cunning like that, so why didn't she mention that? Well, because she's a fucking grifter, that's why. So, So Lauren then interjects with this trite, like, just really just soccer mom bullshit, where she's like, you can take risks when you're young and single and don't have much you're responsible for. The world is your oyster. You know, claiming that she did it herself. I think it's a little unfair to conflate how Tim got to where he is with how Lauren got to where she is, because we all know that pretty girls on YouTube have a massive leg up. I mean, she can produce shit content like this and still get a reasonable amount of views. You know, Tim actually had to have a decent show. He put Alex Jones on his show. I think that was a pretty cool thing to do. He should have Nick Fuentes and Stefan Molyneux on, but again, I'm not in his position. I don't like worship the guy. I have a lot of qualms with the way he does shit, but I got 241 subs, he's got millions, so let's take that into account. And he's not a good looking girl. So that, in a lot of ways, you know, I personally think she was a fucking trad thought, but, you know, how are we ever gonna know, right? So, it's not, and it's also not really easy to take risks when you're young and single. Taking risks is always scary. That's why people choose not to do it, because they would rather comply and enjoy a squalid life of quiet desperation and fear and take a fucking vaccine. So, you know, but on the other side of the risks and the pain, as I think I've talked about in prior videos, as I've experienced myself, you know, it's completely fucking worth it. So don't sit there and act like, you know, oh, well, I have kids now, so everybody has to take a vaccine. It's like, motherfucker, if you have kids, why don't you have even more savings? Why don't you have even more stuff lined up to where they're not going to be threatened if you lose a job or if somebody else loses a job? I know the whole family thing in the United States is completely fucked, but it's like, why are you pursuing materialistic crap to such a staggering extent that both parents have to work? You know, look at how many people are bitching about what's going on in public schools. Public schools have been shit for decades, and you're just now starting to complain. You know, they're, for anybody with two brain cells to rub together, obviously, you know, a sort of free daycare so that women don't have to, at least when the children are young, remain in the home generating a lot of untaxable wealth. That's a whole other topic, but it's like, you know, you're just now starting to complain about public schools. It's like, what these people, they're all so fucking stupid at the end of the day. It's like, just the stuff, it's laughable. So it's like, I get if you're like Lauren here and you want to grift for a few views off of the people that want to remain in the center and listen to everybody and be balanced. Well, you don't want to listen to everybody. You don't want to be balanced. You're a faggot little bitch and you don't want to take a stance. And that's why so many things in the country around us are shit. And that's why for generations so much crazy shit has gone down with people that we look back on and go, wow, what the fuck were they doing? Well, it's because of people like her and people like you that take the vaccine because you wanted to keep your job, because you failed to plan, despite living in like some authoritarian nightmare hellscape for the entirety of your life, never picking up a book. So it's like, you know, if you're in that position, fuck you. It's your fault. You know, if you have kids, everything should be kind of based around having enough to make sure that they're never going to be in a position where they are, you're not having any money. I mean, is that even possible in the United States with all the welfare there is? They're not cutting you off of welfare. I mean, most people just have kids they can't afford because they wanted to bang one night. I mean, it's pretty fucking disgusting, I think. But, you know, that's a problem in the United States because, you know, you can squeeze out kid after kid and you get paid, literally. You get food, water, shelter, whatever. So it's like, you know, why not be smart and cunning like Lauren Southern says and just get fired from your job and go on welfare? I mean, the government forced you there, right? It's, from what I've seen in my life, it's not that bad of a gig for a lot of these people. You know, just have kids, be merry, and don't get the fucking vaccine. It's pretty simple. The government will even pay you if you don't. I didn't even think of that when I was doing the outline. So You know, these people. So she goes on to say, then you have kids and you're gambling with someone else's life, citing that 90% of business startups fail. I mean, yeah, that's like brick and mortar though. I mean, there's so many, like you don't have to start a business to make money in order to pay your bills and make sure that you can live a good life. And it's like, why do you don't actually need that much money to live well. To, like I said, the example of the cheap house, you know, to keep that above your head and this, that, and the other is not really that challenging. So, I mean, maybe you clean cars on the side, maybe you mow lawn, maybe you do this, maybe you do that, maybe you're fucking getting food stamps and Medicaid and all this other shit because the government made you lose your job over some stupid fucking mandate, you know, and you've got a couple side hustles. I don't know. It's the United States in 2021. Despite it being this autocratic nightmare, there still are plenty of ways to make money. You know, maybe not to become a multi-millionaire, but you don't really need that. You know, in fact, if you're spending less time working, that's more time to spend with your kids, which a lot of people, I don't know. Anyway, so, where was I? Okay. So she then lumps all self-employed people in together as if they're all online commenters. Yeah, because she was like, oh, well, you know, us YouTubers, this, that, and the other. It's like, people on YouTube don't even make that much money from YouTube directly. Like if you're smart and you have thousands of subs, you can do like merch or consulting. Oh, my S Pen just broke, or all this other stuff. So like I said, there's a lot of stuff with respect, like that goes into making money on your own, to where it's not just like, oh, if you strike it out on your own at 90%, who do you think you're working for? Did that person start a business and succeed? You know, it's just, yeah, the shit makes no fucking sense. But it doesn't make sense because she's trying to straddle the middle and just to keep the YouTube going for them shekels, you know. People on their shekels, man, it fucking disgusts me, to be honest with you, a lot of the time, the shit people do for these shekels. It's like, why didn't, you know, anyway, I've ranted enough at this point. I'm gonna try and close this out here, but, so it's like, I'll skip that. So the whole video, she had like this condescending smirk. I know I use a lot of emotionality and whatnot, but it's like, I think it comes from a position of strength more than like condescending spurn. Like it's like she's trying to not laugh through this whole fucking video, which is funny because I think she's a joke, but it's like, you know, you don't really, it's hard to take people seriously when they've got just this constant attitude of condescension, which is ironic because she talks about not, you know, using that when it comes down to these people. So she's like, she says something about going to a school board meeting and this, that, and the other. It's like, you realize if you go to a school board meeting now, you're categorized as a domestic terrorist. You know, not to mention that takes a lot of time, and that's actually a pretty politically active thing for a lot of people to do, going to a school board meeting where the FBI now views you as a domestic terrorist. She says, go do that, but you know, take your vaccine and keep your job, dude. You know, fucking stupid. So she sounds like this, and this point, this is gonna sound harsh, I'm a harsh guy, whatever. So Lauren sounds like the type of person who would support a mother whoring herself out to pay for her child as if their immediate benefit is the sole concern, unironically missing the point of preparing beforehand for such situations. Like there's only so much, and what I mean there is like there's only so much you can do once there's actually a problem. If you adequately prepare for the problem by, say, not sleeping with strangers and losers, not sleeping around, saving money, making sure that you have another way to make money on the side, making sure that you've saved up enough money, making sure that you're paying attention to what the fuck is going on. You know, those are things you can do to avoid being in a solution where you're whoring yourself out, humping for scratch on the street so that your kid can have a meal, despite the fact that food stamps are pretty readily available. So you see these women, they're like, oh, I'm just whoring myself out because I need a couple bucks to feed my kids. I'm like, what? Go panhandle. You know, it's probably more, I bet you, if you took some good-looking gal who's anywhere under the age of 35 and you put her on a street corner and she was well-dressed with a sign that said need food, versus she'd probably make more money per hour doing that than whoring herself out, but you never see that. It's always the pity play for people. We'll have pity on them. It's like, no, fuck you. You're a fucking coward. Fuck you. You don't get any pity. Just have rot, basically, you know, because this sick sort of like, I don't know, it's almost like a maternal kind of coddling that goes towards people that are pathetic because they're screw-ups. That doesn't help them. That doesn't help them at all. It doesn't help society at large either, because it says, well, yeah, you can screw up and you still get tons of fucking sympathy. It's just ridiculous. So, you know, and then she goes on to cite macro versus micro problems being an issue, like fatherlessness. It's like, I mean, half of people, from my knowledge at least, grow up with a dad, whereas way more people are participating in this medical experiment, particularly children who are at practically zero risk from getting COVID. So it's like, it's ironic to me to wow, I didn't even think of that. But you're bringing up fatherlessness in an issue where putting a boundary around your family and your life of not getting a vaccine, that's a masculine thing to do. That's something a father would do. So I wonder if she like noticed that unconsciously or something, that fatherlessness is a problem, and perhaps this is why there's all this compliance, because people are all pussies and there's no real men left, so kind of interesting, right? Skip that one here. Yeah, it's not a macro. So she was going on about how like, oh, if you don't take the vaccine, it's not going to make that big of a deal when it comes to the political scene as a whole. And the problem is that if you're an individual, there's nothing you can ever do to make an impact on the scene as a whole, or on the larger macro political scene as a whole. It doesn't matter what the issue is. That's why the most important thing to do is just live in accordance with your values. If those values happen to be taking the vaccine, that's fine. I don't really think you can have that as a value because it's like the dominant thing to do. And there's this argument to be made that if you're conforming, it's a lot more difficult to stand with your values, because it's like, that was a big eyebrow raise for me when I kind of realized that, oh, the whole COVID thing is bullshit. Because I was like, wait a minute, I'm saying the same shit the lamestream media is? I need to look into this. After 3 months of freaking out because of a 10% death rate and a 30% hospitalization rate, turns out there's a 1% death rate and only the fattest and most worthless get hospitalized. It's like, haha, yeah, okay. There's my kick lemming along with everybody else. And it is fun, I'm not gonna lie. It's fun being all scared and cajoled and amped up, and I was wearing a mask over to my fucking buddy's house. Totally retarded. So been there, done that. But see, I can admit it, walk away from it and change. That's what people like Lauren Southern need to do. But you see, if she does that at the scale she's at, she'd lose her YouTube channel. That's kind of explaining how and why the whole thing works, right? So then it got kind of interesting because she was conflating complying with YouTube community standards by censoring what you do, while claiming that censorship is also a problem with getting the vaccine even though you oppose it. I think that's a complete, like, the false equivocation of the week as far as I'm concerned, because it's like, you don't have to be on YouTube, you don't have to do any of those things, but when you literally have to participate in a medical experiment to engage in the economy, that's a little more screwed up than like, I gotta be smart and watch what I say. I think Tim Pool does a great job of this, but he somehow kept his YouTube channel while having Alex Jones on there. I don't know how the hell that happened, but it's like, does she have a point to be made about complying with censorship in general? Yes, but to conflate that then with complying with vaccine mandates just to keep your job, I think is a little, it doesn't really make sense. YouTube's not out here shoving shit into your veins, at least yet anyway. And then, like I had mentioned earlier, being smart and cunning by complying with vaccines would be better served by getting a fake vaccine card, although Lauren doesn't say that because she's a grifter and fundamentally full of shit and just here to, like a lot of women on the internet, make money off of pathetic men that are like, oh, trad thought. She's not traditional, guys. I hate to break it to you. One kid and race mixing, that is not traditional. So maybe put that in your thinking cap and go follow somebody that isn't full of shit, So then she goes on to this spat between Jack Murphy and Tim Pool, which I'm glad she cut into the video because I've been wanting to see that. Long story short, Jack is really just pissed about the fact that he's divorced and doesn't have like total dominion over his children. He says, Jack Murphy said something to the effect of, if they want to continue on in sports that they love at their school, they're going to have to get the vaccine. What do I do then, Tim? Forget baseball, forget yada yada. Tim replies, basically telling him, yeah, forget it. Then Jack says, I wish it were that easy. So I just typed in here, it is that easy, you fucking pussy. You just tell them, no, sorry, we're not doing baseball anymore. My job is to draw a boundary around you of things that can fuck with you. A vaccine that there is no long-term data for against a disease that you have a 0.1% chance of having problems from is not something we're gonna engage in. Lauren then later interjects and says, oh, well, that's like saying go start your own Facebook. It's really? What are you, fucking retarded? You think starting a little league is as hard as starting a Facebook? I guess this is why people are taking the vaccines, because they're so fundamentally disempowered and weak that they can't even imagine starting a fucking sports league. And what is wrong with you people? It's just are you going to be able to post on Facebook? It's not going to be easy. You might have to put some effort into it, but it's like, geez, don't ask these people to do anything beyond just the same fucking thing at their same shitty fucking job every day. It's like, what is there to fight for at that point if this is the rest of society, right? So, Jack then says to Tim, he's like, oh, that's like telling you not to wear a beanie and not to do the show. It's like, what? Yes, getting an experimental vaccine, telling my kid, no, you can't get the experimental vaccine is the same as telling Tim Pool not to wear a beanie. What are you, fucking stupid? And then this is where the whole truth of the matter comes in. They point out that, first of all, Jack's kind of a little bitch. And he's one of these guys, and I'm not saying I'm some paragon of masculinity or anything, but when you, if you see this particular clip in Lauren Southern's video, with the way he's like whining and going on, it's like, maybe that's why your wife divorced you. I don't know. Maybe you should have picked a better woman. I don't know. You know, now you're divorced. It's like, once you get in that situation, you're fucked. You're fucked. You're totally fucked. And I know this is like the worst time ever to ever have kids and get married and stuff, but it's always sucked, guys. Sorry to break it to you. It's always been a pain in the ass to find a good woman, I guess, or a good man for that matter. Geez, look at these people out here today. So I think that's what it's really about in Jack Murphy's case, is he was just understandably very upset about losing dominion over his children. He can't protect his kids. You know, I actually mentioned that to a couple people at church I was talking to, like, how the hell, you know, I come into your church, y'all are like some hive mindset bullshit. How the hell am I supposed to protect my family from the new craze of whatever's going on if y'all just fall in line and do whatever the fucking your Mormon prophet says? It's pretty ridiculous, but these are people today. I guess they've always been that way, haven't they? You know, he says, oh, it's not that simple. Jack repeated that several times. And yeah, it's not that simple once you get divorced. You fucked up. You really fucked up, and you shouldn't have, went down that route. There's people that don't get divorced, so I don't know, man. But then to go on like a YouTube, like that's kind of, you see what I'm saying? Like the meta beta attitude here, where you go on somebody else's show and then vent about the fact that you're upset that you don't have control over your kids anymore because you're divorced, by saying that you should allow your kid to get a vaccine to play fucking sports. So, come on, dude. You know? And I tend to put a lot of the blame on men, but that's a separate video. So it's like, at the end of the day, I just wrote, it's his fault they're divorced. Who chose her? Who chose to have kids with her? All this didgeridoo-me shit. It's like, that's probably why they divorced in the first place. Just look at how the guy's at. And then the fact that he's a fucking conservatard grifter on YouTube, it's like, pfft, yeah, okay, dude. So, and then like I mentioned, Lauren then conflates starting a fucking little league with building a nation, Facebook or bank, something that's obvious. She's, the false equivocation of the week award here is just, we're dinging right up the thing here. So, and then she goes and she cites how certain medical organizations are forgoing mandates because their staff will quit. Really? When we just did the whole fucking video about why you shouldn't stand up for your beliefs and you shouldn't have principles or any of this stuff because it won't work. But then you cite how it actually is working? Wow. Geez, I wonder if more people weren't sorry fucking cowards if we wouldn't be in this position to begin with, if we wouldn't have even had half the economy destroyed by lockdowns. So, I guess in Canada, the vaccination rate's extremely high. That's not a surprise. Canada is a socialist shithole country who, talking about grifters, grifts off the U.S. They should be another U.S. state, I guess, but, actually, do we really? No, we don't want them. We don't want them. The U.S. is already fucked up and commie enough. Florida or Canada can keep their shit show up north, So then I wrote, opposing is never easy. That's why complying is so important. And that's why you don't get to say, oh, I oppose mandates, but I got the vaccine. No, you don't oppose mandates. What you oppose is hard work. What you oppose is not being lazy. What you oppose is not being a conformist. Those are the things that you oppose. You don't then get to claim you're somebody like me or somebody like some of the people I know that actually oppose mandates and actually act in accordance with opposing those mandates. That's like saying all parents are equal or like all mothers are good mothers. Are you kidding me? Some strung out crackhead bitch is not on par with some good, full-time attentive mother. That's ridiculous. So in the same way, don't conflate yourself with me or people that I know or people that are like me if you took the fucking vaccine so you could have your job. We are not the same. So yeah, and just to touch on what I had mentioned earlier, no individual action will ever have a large impact at the societal level. That's why standing on principle in your case is extremely important, because if A, you're not principled, or if you are and then you don't stand on it, I mean, that like destroys a person internally. I can't imagine how I would feel if I had a job and then lost it or got a jab. I'd feel fucking disgusted with myself, but I guess I'm perhaps in the small and, ever dwindling camp of people that actually have standards and values that they'll talk about publicly nonetheless, Yeah, she talks about being quiet and patient and all this other crap. And I think, does that have its place? Yeah, like if you're fucking Schindler, sure, okay, whatever. But being patient and compliant, is how a lot of atrocities function. And people looking back on it, they want to say, oh yeah, I was being patient, I was being compliant, and I had this grand master plan. No, you didn't. You're a fucking pussy. Just shut up and be a little bitch. Don't sit there and act like you had some grand scheme and some grand plan and that's why you just shut up and went along with it. And then after the fact, now you've got this ex post facto justification. You know, no, just shut up. Just say you're afraid of a 1% or less chance of dying and that you got a jab so you could keep your sorry fucking job because you failed to plan for the future.